Welcome to On the Line. I'm Jenny Robb, and we are back with our segment featuring Frank Giampaolo and his book, The Psychology of Tennis Parenting. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Frank, just as an introduction. So Frank Giampaolo is an award-winning international coach, popular international speaker, and sports researcher. He's an instructional writer for ITF, Coaching and Sports Science Review, the UK Tennis Magazine, PTR Magazine, the US PTA, Tennis Magazine, Tennis Pro Magazine, and Tennis View Magazine. Frank is both a USPTA and PTR award-winning educator, a Tennis Congress faculty member, served as the vice chair of the USTA SCTA Coaches Commission, and a featured speaker at the Australian Grand Slam Coaches Convention, the PTR Great Britain Wimbledon Conference, and Wingate Sports Institute in Israel. There's more, but Frank, Frank, thank you for being with us. It is certainly a pleasure to have you here, and thank you for taking the time. So today we're going to talk about Chapter 3. So the title of Chapter 3 is Parental Dialog. And so just reading the chapter name, so many different thoughts came into my head, and it just how important. This is a massive one here that we're going to dive into. And the quote that you started it with is, get into their world instead of forcing them into yours. So yeah, tell us a little bit about Chapter 3.
Well, yeah, getting into their world, I think, is a super important feature that most parents don't really understand yet. And it's based on getting out of the way of the old school, like assembly line type of education that, you know, we all received, but also trying to get out of the world of teaching the same methods that maybe your parents taught you back in the day. So getting into their world kind of requires you taking the time to understand their unique personality profile, right?
Right.
So, you know, the way that they think and take in information and digest, the way they problem solve is based on how they're wired.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't done that yet as parents, it would be really meaningful to go online to personality profiling, right? And the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And take the free quizzes and test it out for yourself. And
those are really kind of enjoyable too. I mean, I've taken the Myers-Briggs multiple times. I always come back in ENFJ, but those profiles are fun actually to kind of go through, and there are free ones, like you said. So
yeah, there are a lot of free ones. And look, some of your kids are really wired to be more, what they call it, sensate, or maybe intuitives, right? Intuitives want to do things first and then talk about it later. And sensates want all the facts before they make decisions. And that's important for you to know with your kids. And even like, you know, judge a personality profile. They like to make lists. They like to be organized. And that might be you as a parent, but your child might be opposite. There might be a different personality profile, like a perceiver. So the idea is to kind of understand your profile and your children's, and you'll have fun with it because, you know, if you have 2 or 3 kids, you know already they're wired totally different.
Yes.
And you're like, how did this happen? They're all being nurtured the same, but they're all different. So
it's fascinating, right? I mean, I find it so fascinating. Yeah,
it is. And look, you're gonna maximize their potential at a much faster rate if you speak their language and use the dialogue that relates to them. So that's the topic, really.
No, it's fantastic. So the first heading we have is the investment. And this is so important. You know, you say, parents, you're not paying for tennis. Tennis is just a vehicle. You're paying for opportunities to help develop life skills. The investment is in their physical, mental, and emotional hyper growth. It goes on. But even just starting there, you know, you're not just paying for tennis. So tell us a little bit about this idea of tennis being the vehicle.
Well, it's a combination of tennis teaches life skills, but also I think more importantly, it exposes poor life skills.
Yes.
And so we see some kids that aren't, they're just not disciplined. And really what happens in tennis tournaments is if the child has a sloppy home life, they're going to have a sloppy tennis game. That's what we've seen over and over and over. Kids that have great time management and organizational skills, they prepare their equipment, they prepare their mindset, right? They're preparing their tennis identity before they even go to practice. And obviously then if they're customizing their practices to their unique needs, they're going to get better faster. And they're going to be able to handle things like resiliency and perseverance and courage. And, you guys have seen it in matches. A lot of times our kids lose in matches, and maybe it's just fear of confrontation. Maybe it's not the follow through on their backhand that's causing them to lose, but it's their ability or inability to overcome fear and courage and things like that. So those are all life skills, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kind of finish this investment heading by saying you're spending money placing your athlete into challenging situations, such as when they want to quit but persist. And that just stuck out in my mind, like you were saying, that how you deal with adversity, because it's coming. It's good. There is going to be adversity. There's
every match, right?
Kinds of adversities. And so, the challenging situations are the instructional situations. And that's when you really show yourself. And, but you can evolve, and that's the thing. It's like knowing yourself, and then that uncovers these situations with adversity can uncover things that maybe you didn't realize about yourself. And so, the parents too, the parents might say, oh, I have this mild-mannered, great kid. And then in a match, it's like, who is this kid? I don't even know who's this kid.
I know, it's true. But I think if this journey is done correctly, that the parents and the kids both realize that the parents are growing too. I mean, we're just really like bigger kids, even though we don't tell our kids that, right?
Right.
But everything, it's a matter of growth. And even like somebody's emotional aptitude, just because they have poor choices and poor habits, it's not ingrained. They can change that. And their memory, usually their fear is based on their memory of past poor performances. But once they do simple things, like start to change their habits and start to change their own choices, not only in a match, but before the match, now they start to get better results. So
yeah, there has to be adversity in training. We've talked a little bit about this before, because if you aren't training in an environment that's going to cause this challenge or confrontation or whatever, you have to put it into practice in your training sessions. And then, because if you're just left to competing and you run into something, then people fall apart. Yeah.
It is really, tennis is just a game of situations and presetting solutions and protocols before they get out there. And I think one of the basic ways to look at it is your children in tennis clinics, especially now that it's summer, they should be suffering in tennis clinics. They should be suffering in practice if they want to be able to suffer in a whole tournament and be, not just match tough, but tournament tough and get to the back end of the tournament. That requires, a little bit of suffering. So they have to get used to that.
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, you say parents investing in raising an elite tennis player are also investing in superior life skills, such as building discipline, gaining goal setting, resiliency, and dedication to a craft, learning good sportsmanship, humble in victory, classy in defeat, and instilling strong work ethic. That's a great list.
I think so. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to do as a parent and as a coach is work on those skills. But keep in mind, parents, a lot of times coaches might be paid to be fixing your child's kick serve or whatever. And so they're not teaching all these life skills, even though you might think that they are. And they think that you're teaching the life skills at home, but you're not.
Right.
And then nobody is. So this is part of the parental job description, to go through a good list of life skills.
Yep.
Talk through them, and any of these life skills that you feel like your child is a little bit lower, underdeveloped, maybe have them Google that term. So maybe it's just adaptability. And parents, you know that in tennis, you got to really be adaptable, because sometimes you warm up and prepare for a 9 a.m. tournament match. Now, next thing you know, it's 11:15 and you haven't even gone on yet.
That's right.
And so, boy, you got to adapt with the correct nutrition and hydration, and bringing all that with you. And
that's right.
So, yeah, there's a big list of parental job descriptions, I think, that would really help the athlete.
Yeah. One of the things from last chapter that I felt really connected with this is that parent mentor, a parent finding a parent mentor. Because if you don't know the little nuances going into a tournament like that, and if the player's new and the parent is new, and they're like, we didn't know we should have brought extra, nutrition bars, or, we didn't know that we might need these things to wait. And so, yeah, having, like you said, in chapter 2, finding a parent that can mentor the parent and kind of just be a guide is incredibly helpful.
It sure is. And ask the tournament directors. Ask them who's been there before in your local area, and I'm sure they'll help.
Oh, yes, without a doubt. So that leads us to the second heading, that is parental insecurities. And so I think it kind of goes right into that. Post-match trauma. Yeah, that's the big one. Disappointment, frayed nerves, temporary insanity. Fear. The fear is inadequacy. And I had to, when I've read that, I kind of just had to sit back and go, wow, yeah, the fear of inadequacy. And that's a huge one just in life as well. And so
yes. This is the fear going through the parent's mind,
right,
while their child is competing, right? We're talking about how difficult it is to sit and watch your child suffer out there, and you can't do a darn thing about it.
That's right.
It's painful. Right. Look, that's the truth. It's not easy.
It is not easy. It definitely is not easy. You go on to say our insecurities and anger after our child falls short of victory have everything to do with how vulnerable we feel sitting, watching our child going down in flames and not being able to do anything about it. And so, like you said, that just sort of encapsulates that idea that it is hard to sit and watch.
It is. I think it's important, though, for parents to understand that at the high levels, if your child is trying to be high performance and maybe playing college ball, they might play 25, 30 tournaments a year. And look, if they win 2 or 3, that is a great year.
Right. You don't know that going in. Yeah.
Parents have to plan on their child is going to lose almost every week. Maybe not first round, but they're going to fall apart. But then it's our job to take that as an information gathering mission.
Right.
And parents want to almost have the attitude that they want to thank the opponent for exposing the weaknesses in their own athlete. So now they can work on it, customize their plan, and improve at a faster rate. So if they're exposing your child has no slice backhand, take notes. Now, I'm not saying it's your job. We'll talk about it, I'm sure, today, but I'm not saying it's your job then to talk to your child about it, but it's your job to maybe text the coach later. Take some notes and do that. So, yeah.
And that communication is invaluable. I mean, and just to have the wisdom and the skill to evaluate the situation while you're in it. And it's very difficult or it can be very difficult to do that. And so in effect, the parents need that guidance. They need training because to be able to kind of remove yourself and see the bigger picture of the idea of thanking the opponent for exposing the weaknesses. It's an incredible skill. It's not easy. And so, but it's so important. And so that leads into admitting that we may be wrong is painful.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Yeah.
I think it is, because we're all going to get emotional, and tennis does bring that out. It brings out vulnerability. But when parents do things like go to their child's room later on that evening and apologize, if they say, I'm sorry that I got upset, you're teaching through modeling. You're teaching that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be vulnerable, because we're all going to do it. And if parents do that, they're modeling a better behavior, as opposed to like a narcissistic trait of I'm never wrong.
Right.
Because that's a difficult trait. If you're handing that off to your child, they're going to have a difficult life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, so after a difficult loss, accepting responsibility requires acknowledging that we regret our behavior. So again, that idea of admitting that you're wrong, being vulnerable, taking a long, hard look in the mirror, whether it's the parent or the player, you need to take that look in the mirror occasionally.
I think it's big. I think it's important for parents to remember that their words, especially after a match when the child feels emotional, their words become the child's inner dialogue in the next tournament. So if the parent's saying, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is broken, this is bad, you screwed up here, all the child is going to remember under pressure is, I'm broken, I'm bad.
That's right.
That's difficult. That's so tough, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so one more here that you say, great tennis parents remove the stigma of apologizing. That one too is pretty profound. The idea, again, getting away from I'm always right, and even if I know I'm wrong, I'm still not going to admit it.
Yes.
Not right. I might know it, but I don't want to admit it. So the idea of taking away that stigma is huge. Yeah.
And that's probably more of old school parenting, right? When we go back a couple of generations, even, we see that people were tougher, and they had to be tougher, and they had to teach people to be tough. And I'm not sure if that's the ways of the world anymore, Right.
Well, I think, to me, it goes into expectations. So as a parent, whether it's talking with the player and the coach, just the coach, or whatever combination, but the idea of what are the expectations for this particular event? Because if you go into it with just like, well, we hope we win, So I think being able to define the expectations, for the parent,
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, because if you are expecting one thing, but you haven't voiced that to the coach or to the child, that parent might have an expectation that's unrealistic or just unfounded because you just don't know. And so if your expectations aren't aligned, things kind of fall apart.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, look, some parents just totally feel that my kid came out of my great, unique gene pool, and I played, college basketball, so they're going to be great. Well, it's really not how it works. And you're out of the money with speculations and expectations. And there are other parents that maybe have their kids go to, 3 or 4 hours of camp, but it's not really high quality, high performance training. It's just a lot of quantity and socialization. And then they expect their kid's going to win the next tournament. And it's not even close to reality, right?
Right. So yeah, like you said, the reality and the expectations, if they're not all in alignment, then it's going to be a difficult day. And like you said, we talked about it last time, having training with plan B or plan C, or, so if you are ready, and so that goes into, what do you expect? Well, I'm expecting that I'm going to, as the parent watching the kid, they go, okay, we've been working on this. I know, the coach spent a little extra time on this, and so I expect this. And,
Right.
Like we've said before, in an open sport, that's much more difficult, because a closed sport is like, who wins the race? Well, who runs the fastest? I mean, I know there's a little more to it.
Yeah, but
the open sport, expectations are different.
yeah, for sure. And then parents that are just listening to this one, open sports or sports like soccer and basketball and tennis, where you have to make millisecond decisions, change directions, change plans. You have to be a little bit flexible and adaptable in an open sport.
Mm-hmm.
And closed sports maybe would be like figure skating, gymnastics, maybe, where you do the exact routine in the exact order, right? And that's a little bit different with your brain functions. And but what should be expectations, in my opinion, it should be based on data, like, quantifying the data. And it could be very simple, like even a parent that doesn't know a lot about tennis can do some charting. They can just take notes on their phone, like every time the child gets a first serve in or misses a first serve, they just make a little check mark on their phone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now they're putting in first serve percentages. And if the athlete's making 40% first serves in, now we have an expectation for the next tournament. We're saying, look, let's see if we can get that to 50%. If you can get your first serve percentage to 50%, you win. That's all you have to try to do this next tournament, is hit this performance goal, and we're great, because that means they're growing and they're improving.
That's right. That's so right. Definitely. So parents' match play observations delivered to an athlete right after the competition creates a love of competition or distaste for competition. And so again, with the modeling idea that we've talked about, and then, training for expectations that are realistic, and the goal setting, all these things kind of swirling around, and we go, okay, are you nurturing a love of the battle? Are you nurturing a love of competition? Or is it a distasteful thing and the kid doesn't want to do it anymore? I mean, how many times do we see a kid, play some tennis, thinks they're doing pretty good, lose both rounds and you're out, and your parents are going, is this what we ought to be doing? Is this are we getting anywhere here? Like
Yeah. I think go ahead. That's why it's so important, I think, that the parents are educated about their job descriptions, and there is a team synergy or a team harmony between the on-court tennis coaches and then maybe being the off-court trainers. And but the athlete, especially if you have a teenager, a young teen, they really should be accountable for the idea of, after every match, they have to grab their phone and write 3 things they did well, 3 things they want to improve. And then the next match, do 3 and 3, next match, 3 and 3. At the end of the tournament, they have to text this in a group text to their trainers and coaches and parents. And so everybody on the team knows what they need to work on.
Right. And that brings up an interesting point as well, as far as the charting, which I love it. And you have fantastic charts that we'll talk about another time. But talking about the 3 things you did well, that the kid in their mind, the 3 and 3, I think that also applies to how a parent should be charting the match. How about, instead of missed another backhand in the net, missed another backhand in the net, what if you train the parent to see the good thing? Like if you say, oh, the coach and my child have been working on, recognizing that short ball, moving forward, and so training a parent's eye that might not really know what that looks like. But, in practice, the coach can talk to the parent and be like, here, look at this. This is what we're talking about, and so then charting is looking for positive things as well, instead of just, you double faulted 4 times or whatever. But I think, if the kid is evaluating some good and some areas that need help, that have been uncovered, I think, it could go towards the parents' idea of how to watch a match.
Yeah, right on.
I mean, so teaching the parent to see the good things that are more, maybe not quite as easy to see as a miss in the net. You double faulted. But what about if you've been working on attacking that short ball, going in, whatever the play might be, and then you see it, even if it doesn't win the point, it could still be the parent recognizing that the child was doing the game plan or trying to implement what they'd been working on. And so for the parent to be able to see that, I think is an incredible skill that doesn't get enough attention, because you might, like my mom, through all the tennis that I played, she's fantastic, but she wouldn't know how to keep score. Like, if she watches me, she doesn't know all that stuff, and maybe it's better that way. But I think it's important to, how do you approach the match? What are you seeing? What are you actually seeing?
It sure is customized, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why it's hard sometimes. It's hard for coaches to coach because they don't see what's going on in tournaments. And it's a weird sport, right? I think we probably talked about it, but in football, baseball, basketball, the coaches are coaching during the games, right? In tennis, the coaches coach all week, and then the parents are the weekend coaches. So there's definitely a disconnect. And I love the idea that you're talking about exposure or avoidance. I mean, if we're trying to get the kids to attack short balls more, even if they miss volleys or swing volleys or overheads, that's a good thing, because they're getting exposure.
That's right.
Instead of avoiding it. The worst thing would be avoiding it. Right.
Yes, definitely. And that's such an important point. I mean, for so long, we talk about this forever, but if an athlete gets very comfortable just staying at the baseline, and so they go play a match, even if they win the match and behaved, like a great sportsman, if they didn't try to go into the net, if that's, in the same scenario, then it might be difficult for the parent, because their child just won, even though the kid didn't try to go in at all. They just were happy to sit back and hit ground strokes. So how do you go, I'm glad you won this match. You did a great job. You were very consistent, but I never saw you try to come to the net, I mean, or just how to look at a match. There's so many different ways to watch a match. I mean, if I watch, per se, cricket, I would have no idea what was going on. I mean, and somebody else watching will see something completely on a different level than me watching cricket, because I have no idea what I'm even looking at.
That's another side that might be a disconnect too, is what you're talking about, is the parental tennis history and what do they know about the game. But if they are trying to raise even if a college player, almost a world-class tennis player, I mean, if they're going to play D1 college, right? Mm-hmm. They have to be great, because their rivals for that team, the Slaughterland team, are all the international players that are top in the ITF. They're top in the world. That's who's getting all the college scholarships.
Right.
So parents have to be involved. And it's meaningful, I think, that if parents want to be hobbyists and not really be involved, that's fine, but they shouldn't expect their athletes to be high performance. They should only expect, hobbyists. So that's important. But that's a whole conversation, isn't it? Of how to chart and what to chart. And
I love charting, so I got off on a little bit of a tangent there.
It's nice, yeah.
So you say your words become your child's inner dialogue, and that's so true and so important because, you do hear the voices in your head. They are there.
Yeah. I mean, they become the athlete's dark passenger, right? Sometimes the battle, it's not even the opponent that wins the match against your child. It's just that your child can't handle their own fear and nervousness. And sometimes that does stem from the parents. Not always. We don't want to give the parents all the bad rap for that. But so this is, how we decide to talk to our athletes and what we decide to talk about, which basically is more solutions versus problems, right? Try not to be problem oriented because we want our kids to be wonderful problem solvers in the middle of a match.
Right.
Problem solvers just automatically go to the solution. They don't whine about the problems and yell and scream about the problems. They're just solution oriented. And that also involves understanding that a large part of the match, maybe even 75% of the match, is in between points. So that's not even the athlete's hardware. It's not the strokes and athleticism.
Right.
That's done quickly. That's like 3 or 4 seconds. That's done. Now they're in 20 seconds of software, right? Of mental and emotional. There's way more time in mental and emotional.
You know what, Frank? I have never thought of it that way. I'm a little embarrassed, but that is, yeah. I mean, points are so short. I mean, we know this. We know you have, the time between points and the time between games or between sets, and there is more time spent in your mental and emotional space. That's a really important thing to realize.
And practice, right? I mean, when the athletes are practicing, they should be practicing things like, I'm in a hitting phase, now I'm in a thinking phase. Now I'm back in a hitting phase. Now I'm back in the thinking. And part of the thinking is not letting your emotions override and hijack you. So mental and emotional, but it's just stepping into the thinking phase and stepping back into the playing phase. And I don't think a lot of junior athletes think of it like that.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I don't think that is said that way very often, but it does come to mind, and I can't remember when it was, but it was, I was watching a Grand Slam, I can't remember, just a few years ago or what, but it had been one of those, it was the Australian Open, I remember, one of those really long 5-set matches. It was probably Djokovic and Nadal. Yeah, it was. And I remember during the ceremony, somebody actually brought them out chairs because it was going so long and they'd been on the court so long. But the point of the story is one of the commentators made reference to, yes, this was like 5 hours long or however it was. But then there was a statistic of during that 5 hours, that they're out there for this match, they actually only were in physical action for like 45 minutes. That is not the right times.
Well, no, good. It's a good point though. And way back in the day, and this is going to make me seem super old, but this is even back in the early 90s when I used to be the director at Vic Braden Tennis Colleges. We would do even stopwatches. We didn't have it on the phones back then, but sometimes it'd be 80% of the match is not even the ball in play.
Wow.
And so the funny way to think about it is when the player walks up to the line to serve, the point is almost over. That's how quick it is.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
I mean,
that is so interesting. It goes back. So I love how in this part, you go on to say, if your post-performance banter is repeatedly, you're not good enough. And so I think so we're talking about what the parent is saying, what the athlete is hearing in their mind, but maybe that fear is connected to the parent's fear of inadequacy, like we talked about a minute ago. So is there a fear of inadequacy in the parent that then goes on to the child, like, you're not good enough? I mean, so it's kind of intertwined there. So that skill building for both the athlete and the parent there. Again, that fear of inadequacy, I think that's just a really huge point.
I think it's important, though, too, to note that it's usually not the words that are wrong from the parent. It's usually their tone of voice and their body language that stops the athlete from listening. They hear the negative, angry tone, and boom, they're done listening to you.
That's right.
So that's
true.
why we talk about it's best maybe if the parents, they can get it off their chest. They just text all their notes and information. And then later on that night, after you proofread it, send it to the coach. So here's what I observed with my child's play. That also goes hand in hand with, don't call the coach or text the coach 50 times on Sunday after every game because you're upset. And unless you're going to pay the coach for that time, because that's not fair for the coach. Right.
And that's a very tricky line. That boundary is very, very gray.
Yeah, right on.
This one also really spoke to me. You say parents unknowingly destroy the inner belief needed by their junior athletes. And that is such a powerful statement, because most parents, I would say, that is not what they want to do. You want to nurture your athlete, so you might have the best of intentions and you might not realize that you're destroying the belief. I'm like, oh gosh.
And it's not even we're not even talking about only your words. It could be just facial expressions, and your child might go in and take a swing volley and hit it long, and instantly, they look over at you.
That's right.
And if you're shaking your head in disgust, they're not going to go into the net anymore.
Right.
Because they want to please their parents, right? They want to.
Yes.
They want the harmony. So it's tough to do, right? You got to be pretty stoic when you're a tennis parent out there.
Yes. Gosh, and that's hard for some of us. So I love this one too, to finish. All they need to hear from you is how much you love to watch them play and how proud you are of them. And that seems like a simple thing that should be easy to do. When you hear it and we talk about it, you're like, well, yeah, of course, but really, if you don't know, what, like going back to the role, the role of the coach is different, but the parent just being able to say, I love to watch you play. I'm proud of you. Whatever, if you have a child, say, that is being cheated, but they don't want to do anything about it, to the point that, like, my niece, when I was traveling around with her, she would play out balls, and I'd go, that it was in or out, right? Or do you, or, I'm not sure. And she's like, well, yeah, but I didn't want, it was close. I didn't want her to think I was cheating. And I'm going, oh my gosh. So we had to work on calling the ball out, and then I could go win or lose the match. That's something that I can go, I'm really proud of you. You didn't play as many out balls. You did do a better job. So it's just,
they have to be able to put that spin on it. And sometimes it is like psychology, like you're doing reverse psychology, right?
Right.
And you're right. There's a lot of examples. If I'm proud of you for trying to go in more of this match, I'm proud of you for attempting your kick serve on a second serve.
Right.
And take the negative and you got to spin it to positive before it comes out of your mouth.
Right.
If you're a parent that's really, interested in the best for their children. Some parents are a little bit tougher and they do expect the kids to do it their way, and that's fine too. That's their prerogative, right?
I have a dear friend whose name is also Jenny. She played for the University of Alabama, phenomenal player, had 2 kids. One of her boys was very competitive and probably could have played college tennis, but opted not to ultimately. And I remember that my friend Jenny, she would get so worked up during matches that she wasn't enjoying herself. And it was so hard for her because she could see some of the things in a match that a parent that hadn't gone through that experience of playing up to that level. And I remember when she watched her son play his last match in juniors, and he was still sort of wavering on, do I want to play in college? Do I want to just go to wherever and not play? And so she didn't realize that that match was the last match that she would watch her son play. And I remember she called me just in tears, and she was like, I wasted so much time. I now it's just over. She's like, I can't believe, it's like you want it back. And so I've actually had her kind of share her story as a mentor for other parents. I just not thought about that I did that.
That's good.
And she would tell her story. She'd be like, I would get so worked up that I had a hard time enjoying watching him play, and it was so stressful. And then when you realize, now it's gone, and you go, I can't believe that's the last match that I'm watching the kid play. And you go, what happened here?
It does go deeper too than tennis matches and tournaments. Like when I go back and I just had dinner with a player that did some pro tennis and played for Harvard, and all we talked about was how we went through the underground part of the pyramids in Egypt when he played in Cairo, in Mexico, how we went into an underground river, or in Florida, how we found an alligator in the Everglades. And so doing something, indigenous to the region, doing something other than tennis is really meaningful, because 10 years later, you guys are going to be laughing hysterically about where tennis took you, because it's crazy the cities and the places tennis can take you.
That is so on point.
And do all the fun things too. Don't just sit in a hotel, right?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. My niece, she lives in Denver now, but she visited not too long ago, and we just got to talking and reminiscing about some old tennis stuff. And I'll make this quick, but she was, I think, 12 or 13, and we had driven from here in Birmingham to Little Rock to play at this really nice club there. And so I'm, on a mission. I'm like, okay, we got to get there. We got to pick up the tournament packet. We got to check in. I don't really know where I'm going. And, and so, we get there, and she and I are walking across the parking lot to go in the club to check in. And I guess we didn't look too scary, because I did, it's like you can't see the forest for the trees. Like, I'm just on this mission to walk into the club. And then I hear this laugh, and I'm like, why does that laugh sound familiar? And we had walked right in front of Bill Clinton, and he was sitting in a golf cart. And then you look up, and I see all these black armored SUVs. It's like, I hadn't even seen, I wasn't even read, like, I'm just going in.
Yeah.
And so it's like stories like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, we went and we walked right in.
You were tunnel vision, weren't you?
Yeah, we just walked right in front of Bill Clinton. It was hysterical. It said we must not have looked too scary. The Secret Service didn't take us out.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, like you said, it's those fun things. It's the fun things.
Yeah.
And that leads into your next point here, where it's always and never. And this one is huge, because even in life, right? If you're talking to your spouse, and it's like, you never do this, or you always do that, a negative, and always, those exaggerations, you say, open a floodgate of negative emotions. That's so true. It's just so true. And so again, to be careful with your words, and a little more particular than throwing out that exaggeration.
And this applies to coaches too, doesn't it? That sometimes they're coaching and they should be specifying that in this situation, never hit a drop shot. Well, if you're, 10 feet behind the baseline, but instead of saying don't ever hit a drop shot, because now the athlete might misinterpret. And so, yeah, try not to use those terms. It makes it very confusing, but also it makes athletes very defensive.
Yes.
They start thinking about how that might be a lie. And so they're not listening to the message you're trying to give. They're caught on, I don't always do that. So I think that's meaningful. Try to give parents, just try to say things like, if you're going to talk to your child about their tennis, say, these are my observations. When you want to talk, let me know. We can chat about my observations, or maybe you should try to consider this. Give the baton to the athlete.
That's right.
Let them be the person that's accountable, that's the problem solver. How would you solve that problem? What would you do next? If you were coaching somebody like one of your friends, what would you have told them to do? These are the type of questions that I like to ask. And that's why I say it's big. Also, we talk about asking. Don't tell them what to do. Ask them what they think they should do, right? Because now all of a sudden their brain starts to problem solve. And the more they problem solve, the better they get at it.
Absolutely. And that just is a beautiful segue into the next point here, where you say, correct conversations. And so that was directly there. And so you say it's the parental role to create accountable young adults, solve their own problems, nurture them to apply solution-based dialogue to increase confidence and resiliency. And that's just beautifully said. That's so beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, that's important for me too, almost on a daily basis. And it's not easy though to not use the always and nevers and the ask, don't tell, but yeah.
You say these conversations should be based on the performance needed, not
the
outcome.
Yeah.
So it's like winning is a thing, but it's not the only thing.
That's important. And I think it's important for parents to note that your child can win all the time if you just put them in lower matches. If they're playing against somebody that's not that good, they might even do a lot of their performance goals incorrectly. They might be performing poorly, but they still win.
Right.
Right. Or on the other hand, maybe they're playing somebody, maybe a UTR a couple numbers above them, and they go 7-5, 7-6, and they played the best match of their life performance-wise. They still barely lose, but they hit their performance goals.
Right.
And that's why we say performance goals are better than outcome goals, right?
Absolutely. And that's so applicable to many other things as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So next we have the psychology of listening. And I love this because I think we could all do better to learn to be better listeners. And it's so important. So yeah, the psychology of listening. So you say communication styles, whether it's passive aggressive, or dominating. It's important to understand that if your style isn't working, change your communication system to fit your listener. So that's really interesting. I kind of had to sit and think about that for a minute. So take us through where this idea of the psychology of listening.
Well, if you're saying the same thing to the athlete over and over and over, you're getting no results, it's your fault, not their fault. Because you're not finding the correct door inside the athlete. You're repeatedly doing something that's not working over and over again, and that's not productive.
Right.
So finding a different way in. Most of the time, the best way inside your child to get them to think is ask questions. Mm-hmm. And that's part of that ask, don't tell, when you're communicating. And when you ask, then you have to listen.
Right.
Because that comes next. Right. And so I think that's important. So instead of listen to me, young man, instead of that angle, we have to go the other way.
Yep. And so that brings us to the final one that we've already mentioned a few times, the ask, don't tell. So our last
Okay.
And you say extrinsic motivation, often a reward or punishment, and that's temporary. The only lasting force is self-motivation, which is intrinsic motivation. And that's a huge one. There was a player that I worked with for a while. She was just an absolutely adorable young lady. And her dad would say, all right, if you win this match, I'm going to get you the dog you've been wanting. And it's like, wait. I mean, that's nice and all, but the kid wanted this dog so badly. And, so then the dad's like, if you win this match.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yeah.
so
it should be based on performance goals, right? If you play three matches and tournaments in a row and you hit these goals, whatever the goals might be that you guys can create together as a team with the coach, right? You put together your 2 or 3 performance goals. Like you said, it could just be attacking short balls. If you go to the net 5 times in a match, even if you don't win, you do that 3 times and maybe you get your puppy. But yeah, performance goals, and try to really get to the point where the athlete is solving their own problems, right? Whether it's match awareness or you're talking about the elements that day, like it's windy or it's cold, or prepping for a match, whether it's not hanging out with the kids before the match, but they're actually sitting in the car alone, visualizing their patterns of play, becoming a warrior, like a Rafael Nadal would be morphing into a warrior. That's all awareness. And those are the topics we can talk about instead of the outcome.
That's right. 100%, and then, so we've talked about the reward kind of, and, punishment is another big one. One of the worst I've seen, this is years ago now, but the father of this young boy, I think it was Southern Cup, or it was a big like team event for Team Alabama playing, Southern Cup. It's kind of a big deal. And when the kid lost, the dad took his tennis bag and put it in the trash and then left the kid at the site.
Yeah.
And the bag and put it in the trash.
Yeah.
What is going on here? Like,
I know it's
so hard.
There are some horrific stories like that. I know. The beauty is that most parents are terrific and they want to learn and for parents. And I think it's meaningful, share these type of podcasts and maybe when you're taking your child to tournaments, or maybe when you're sitting in the car during their tennis lessons, just that's the time you can sit down and listen to these things,
Right. That's right. I love says, please ensure you motivate your athletes by praising their leadership and letting them know their organizational work is making a difference. That's so, the autonomy, the ownership.
Yeah.
That just kind of brings this whole chapter together. Just the motivation, the encouragement again. I love the word encouragement. So yeah, the ask, don't tell. And that's kind of, I kind of think of like a wellness check. If you are concerned about a neighbor or a parent, or if you're concerned, you can call the cops and do a wellness check. And so taking that and twisting it into this, if you are a parent that this has been trying to not just negative feedback when they get in the car after the match, or, if the parent has really been making an effort to, I'm not going to, give you this unsolicited advice, and so in an effort to not do some of those bad habits, it just, it can backfire a little bit. And so if you're not talking, so you're not advising that unsolicited advice, but the kid isn't saying much, then there's a disconnect again. And so I kind of think occasionally for a parent and a coach, and it wouldn't even have to be after practice. It could be in the car on the way to school or grocery store or wherever, and just kind of do like a wellness check and be like, hey, how are things going? How are things going? And that doesn't necessarily mean, are you getting that backhand slice, or just a wellness check? Like, where are you? Like, how are you feeling about your game? How are you feeling about this? And so this whole idea of ask, don't tell, and kind of like a wellness check. It's like, okay, you've gotten hands off, but it's really important to just check in with the kid,
Even if parents just Google the questions you should be asking your children. And there are tons of parental sites that talk about this topic, and you're right on the money. You're right on that level where we want to talk about things like, how do you feel about your tennis? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? What do you want to play? What tournaments do you want to play?
Right.
What do you think you should be doing this summer? And so that's all about getting into their world and teaching them how to communicate. Because a lot of kids nowadays, as you know, they're on their cell phones all the time, and they only want to communicate through text messages.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love ending this chapter with the ask, don't tell.
No, that's good.
And
that's
kind
good.
of just this idea of a wellness check. How are
things? So you're helping them solve their own problems. You're helping them self-advocate, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you like this chapter, because I actually like the next chapter even better, chapter 4.
Well, I'm excited. Like I said, I don't read ahead, so
all right.
I'll have to read and do my notes.
Think
a little bit. So I'm excited. I'm very excited then. But Frank, thank you. I think this was a really good one. And until next time, I hope you enjoy your time out there. Are you traveling much now? No, I know you were in Florida recently, but you're back in California.
I'm back in California now for about 2 weeks. So it's wonderful to be home. So I'm going to hang out with my golden retriever today.
Yes, that is wonderful.
All right.
That is wonderful.
Thank you, listeners. Thanks to all your listeners.
Yeah, you guys, and remember, you can always email, get in touch with us if you need to. I'll put the information on the screen if you need to contact us. We're happy to help out if we can.
We do consultations all the time. So yeah.
Well, Frank, thank you. I said,
okay.
Thank you. Good one.
Bye.
Okay, bye.